Hi, I'm Rachel Mayberry, Senior Director of Marketing and Communications here at HeartSpring, and I am with Corey Visor Lawrence. I did it right. And she is an audiologist at HeartSpring, and you're relatively new.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get into audiology?
So I got my undergraduate and my doctorate degree at Wichita State University. I'm from Augusta, Kansas. So one of the reasons I got into audiology is also one of the reasons I came to HeartSpring. My little brother, who's going to be 23 in just a week, and he came to HeartSpring as an outpatient for speech pathology when he was younger. And when I was in school, I didn't know what the heck I was going to do. So in my undergraduate degree, I decided maybe I'd want to be a speech pathologist, and I took a couple of audiology classes and just fell in love with it. So that's why I'm here.
That's really cool. What is audiology just kind of entail out in the general public, but then what does it also look like here at HeartSpring?
Yeah. So as an audiologist, it's my job to focus on our ears and our hearing organ. So when you hear of an audiologist, a lot of the times you'll see it referred to as a person that does hearing aids. And a lot of audiologists specifically work with an older population. So we can diagnose hearing disorders, work with hearing aids, work with cochlear implants, that kind of thing. Specifically at HeartSpring, we're only a pediatric facility. So I work with only kids, which is my jam. So most of the kids that come in, we do hearing screenings, full diagnostic evaluations. I can fit and dispense hearing aids as well as map cochlear implants. And the newest thing we're doing is called auditory processing testing, which is my bread and butter. So I'm really excited to get that going here.
So tell me a little more about that. I had heard that was something you did some extra education for and then brought it to HeartSpring.
Right. So after I graduated with my doctorate, I've taken some special classes and some special certifications for auditory processing disorder. And what that looks like kind of depends on the kid, and the testing itself is rather long and arduous and difficult, but it's what it needs to be done in order to diagnose. So auditory processing disorder is a group of hearing disorders that makes processing what's coming into your ears difficult. So you'll often hear it referred to as what the brain does with what the ears hear. So your peripheral hearing, which is anything from your cochlea, which is your hearing organ, out to your outer ear, can be completely normal. But from the cochlea to the auditory nerve, up to the auditory portion of your brain, some wires are getting crossed. So a lot of these kids will have trouble with understanding speech and noise. They will maybe hear cat when I say bat, or they'll hear that. So they will misunderstand some of those really small portions of language that are important for understanding. And when you mishear a word, then that totally changes the meaning. Some of these kids will have a hard time concentrating with what they're hearing, or concentrating on what they're hearing. So it looks different in every kid, but if you suspect that your child is having a listening difficulty, then it's always good to take them to your audiologist.
So what does the treatment for the APD look like?
So treatment, again, depends on exactly what we find. There are special subsets in auditory processing that we test. So depending on what those deficits are, we'll go with how we treat. So treatment honestly looks a lot like speech pathology in the way that we sit down and we kind of do like rote drills, and then there's also options to do them online. So there's some fun iPad games out there, and it'll depend on every kid that comes in, and age matters too.
Yeah. So obviously this is something new that's coming to HeartSpring. It's super cool that we're doing this. And you talked a little bit about some of the other services that you've done, but what all does audiology at HeartSpring look like? What different things have you seen?
Yeah, so it looks like any communication difficulty. So almost every kid that comes in our door at HeartSpring, I at least do a hearing screening on, because again, it's the first step to hearing and understanding, and then understanding up to learning. So I see kids who are typical who have hearing loss. I see kids who are neurodivergent who have hearing issues. So it's kind of just all over the place, which is the best thing about HeartSpring. I'm really lucky to work with a group of professionals and be in multidisciplinary teams, so I get to learn from them and they get to learn from me, and we all work together as a team on certain kids, so I think that's the best part.
Absolutely. I would be remiss if I did not put a plug out there. For parents, we know the school year is getting ready to end,
Yes.
but that means it's going to start again. And one of the best ways to kick off the new school year is getting a hearing test. And I've brought my daughter here to get her hearing test before school starts. It's a wonderful experience. So parents out here watching, if you are looking for a place, we do that. I'm going to follow up or end this with one question. What are you most passionate about in regards to hearing services?
Well, like I said, auditory processing, that's my bread and butter. And there are not a lot of professionals out there that do this work. There's really only one other place in Wichita that does it. So I think it's a niche because they say only about 3 to 5% of kids have auditory processing, but that's a service that's needed. And that can really help a child take off in their learning if they're struggling. And again, identification is the most important part. So if you have concerns about a child with hearing loss or communication difficulties, the best thing about HeartSpring is the multidisciplinary aspect. So I think we're always a good place to start.
Awesome, thank you. I want to thank Corey for coming in today. I got to learn something new, and as always, it's so much fun. We want to thank you all for tuning in each time to our video. We hope you learned something new, and as always, if you have questions, put them in the comments and we'll get to them. Thank you.
Thank you.